You think you're innocent. You think manipulation is something other people do. But what if I told you you're already using Machiavellian tactics and you don't even realize it? It doesn't matter how kind you are, how honest you try to be. In the silent corners of your behavior, behind the smile, the compromise, the careful phrasing, you're playing the game. Because life is a game, a ruthless one. And whether you're ready or not, your brain evolved to survive it using ancient psychological weapons. This isn't about being evil, it's about instinct. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. Why did you downplay your success in that meeting? Why did you let your friend think it was his idea when you planted the seed? Why did you smile, nod, and pretend to agree just to avoid resistance? These aren't just social moves, they're tactics, Machiavellian tactics. And here's the dangerous part. The moment you don't realize you're using them is the moment you lose control of them. Because what you don't master ends up mastering you. This video will expose you, not to shame you, but to sharpen you. We're going to uncover 5 subtle ways you're already playing the Machiavellian game, whether you know it or not. And by the end, you won't just recognize your hidden tactics, you'll own them, refine them, and weaponize them. Because in a world of silent battles and invisible leverage, the man who sees the strings behind the curtain doesn't get played. He pulls them. This isn't a channel for the passive. It's not for those still waiting for life to hand them power, recognition, or clarity. This is for the strategic. For the ones who've always felt a quiet edge. The ones who've played by the rules and saw others win by breaking them. If you've ever looked around and thought, there's a deeper game being played, and I want in, this is where you start. Here, we don't preach virtue. We study leverage. We don't chase motivation. We build mastery. If you're done living unconsciously, if you're ready to stop reacting and start controlling outcomes, then subscribe now. Because once you see the game for what it is, you'll never play it the same again. Number 1, strategic silence. You've done it before. Someone insults you, challenges you, questions your intentions, and instead of reacting, you say nothing. Not because you were scared, but because you knew something they didn't. Silence doesn't mean defeat. It means control. This is the Machiavellian tactic, hiding in plain sight. Strategic silence, the ability to withhold not just your words, but your entire emotional reaction during moments of tension, conflict, or negotiation. Most people panic in silence. They fill it, they ramble, they confess. They try to explain themselves, justify themselves, make others comfortable. Why? Because silence creates uncertainty, and uncertainty forces truth to surface. But the Machiavellian mind knows better. Silence is not absence, it's pressure. It's the invisible weapon that makes people reveal their hands before you even show your face. Imagine a heated conversation. Most people raise their voice, argue, over-explain. But when you stay quiet, the room tilts. The other person keeps talking. They try harder. They start guessing what you're thinking. They overcommit. And without even lifting a finger, you've gained leverage. Strategic silence disorients. It forces your adversary to confront their own assumptions. It makes them wonder if they went too far or not far enough. It makes them doubt themselves. Why does this work? Because silence is unnatural in a reactive world. We're conditioned to respond immediately, to prove ourselves, to clarify, to be liked. So when you refuse to feed that expectation, you become unpredictable. And unpredictability breeds power. Machiavelli understood this instinctively. He advised rulers to conceal their intentions. Not just in speech, but in posture, in presence. Because once your opponent sees your next move, they've already neutralized it. But silence? Silence is unreadable, and unreadable is untouchable. You've already used this tactic. That moment when you didn't text back right away, when you paused before answering the job offer, when you said less than expected in a room full of talkers. You weren't being shy, you were gaining psychological ground. And that's what strategic silence really is. The refusal to give away your position until the target reveals theirs. So here's the key. Silence is not weakness. It's the tool the strong use to unmask the weak. The next time someone tries to provoke you, don't defend. Don't rush to explain. Let them sweat in the void. Let their assumptions unravel, and watch how fast the mask slips. Silence is a sword you never have to swing. Just carry it long enough, and the right people will cut themselves trying to figure out where you stand. Number 2. Selective truth-telling. If silence is the weapon of control, selective truth is the scalpel of manipulation. And chances are, you've used it more than once without even realizing it. It happens in job interviews when you highlight only the parts of your experience that sound impressive, while conveniently leaving out the mistakes. It happens in relationships when you share a story that paints you in a favorable light, even if it's not the full picture. It happens in negotiations when you mention what supports your argument and leave out what doesn't. This is not lying. It's framing. And it's one of the most common Machiavellian tactics hiding in plain sight. Most people think deception means telling bold, outrageous lies. That's amateur-level thinking. The real manipulation happens in how you present the truth, what you choose to emphasize, what you leave unsaid, what you delay, redirect, or repackage. Because truth is not neutral, it's a tool. And Machiavellian thinkers use it not to inform, but to influence. Niccolò Machiavelli himself wrote, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are." In other words, appearances matter more than reality, because most people don't dig deeper. So why would you ever give them the full picture when a carefully angled slice will do? Consider the psychological mechanics behind it. The human brain fills in gaps. When you share 80% of a story, people instinctively assume the missing 20% supports the rest. That's how framing works. And that's why selective truth-telling is more powerful than a lie. It gives the illusion of transparency while quietly guiding the outcome. This tactic shows up in high-stakes scenarios all the time. A politician answers the question he wanted to be asked, not the one he was actually asked. A business leader reveals just enough data to inspire confidence, but hides the real risk. A partner says, "I've told you everything important," but never defines what important means. And the moment someone challenges the narrative, it can be easily defended. "Everything I said was true." And technically it was. But Machiavellian strategy doesn't rely on technicalities. It relies on control. Control of perception, control of pacing, control of what others believe they know. Here's the paradox. The more honest you appear, the more people lower their guard. So when you tell partial truths with full confidence, you appear more trustworthy than someone who awkwardly stumbles through the whole story. That's the trap. And you've likely walked right into it. Now here's the critical takeaway. Selective truth-telling isn't evil. It's simply the recognition that influence is often more important than confession. When used consciously, it becomes a tool for survival, especially in a world where full transparency can be used against you. So the next time you speak, don't just ask, "Is this true?" Ask, "What effect will this truth create?" Because that's how you go from being honest to being strategic. Number 3, calculated charm. You've smiled when you didn't feel like it. You've complimented someone not because you meant it, but because it got you closer to what you wanted. You've turned on charisma like a switch. That wasn't kindness. That was calculation. And it worked. Welcome to calculated charm, the third Machiavellian tactic you're already using without realizing it. Most people associate charm with likability. They think it's a natural trait. Some are born with it, others aren't. But that's a lie. Charm is not a personality trait, it's a strategic tool, and the most dangerous players know exactly how and when to deploy it. Calculated charm isn't about being genuine. It's about being effective. It's about shaping perception so precisely that people feel good around you, and they don't even know why. This is how Machiavellian thinkers operate. They don't rely on brute force. They make people want to say yes, want to cooperate, want to lower their guard. And they do it by manufacturing warmth, sincerity, attention, on command. Watch closely in business. The CEO who walks into the room smiling, remembering everyone's name, asking about their family, he's not there to bond. He's there to disarm, to earn instant compliance before the real negotiation even starts. In politics, charm wins before policy is even discussed. In dating, it creates infatuation before true character is revealed. In conflict, it calms the target before the strike. Why is this tactic so effective? Because the human brain equates likability with safety. When someone makes us feel good, we want to believe they have good intentions. But Machiavellians exploit that reflex. They charm not out of sincerity, but out of strategy. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of your social victories, job offers, promotions, romantic success, weren't based on facts or merit. They were based on how effectively you managed perception. And that's exactly what charm is. Perception control, cloaked in a smile. But let's be clear, charm doesn't make you fake. It makes you formidable if you know when to turn it off. Because calculated charm, when used correctly, has an expiration date. It's not your default, it's your entrance. It's how you gain access, not how you maintain power. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. He observed that a prince must appear merciful, faithful, humane, religious, upright, but only as long as it serves his purpose. When the charm stops working, he shifts, cold, rational, unapologetic. That's how real power behaves. Friendly on arrival, fearless on command. So here's what you need to know. You're not being nice, you're engaging a tactic. You're using charm as a soft entry into hard influence. And the moment you mistake it for virtue, you lose your edge. Use it, control it, and never forget, it's not about being liked, it's about being obeyed without resistance. 4. Emotional withholding. You've done it before. Left a message on read. Held back a compliment you knew they were craving. Paused before responding, not because you didn't care, but because you knew silence had more power than words. That's not coldness, that's control. And it's called emotional withholding. Most people believe emotions should be freely expressed, that love, praise, support should flow openly and often. But Machiavellian thinkers, they don't give anything freely, not even emotion. Why? Because emotion, when rationed deliberately, becomes currency. In relationships, the person who needs less always controls the person who needs more. It's a law of power. The one who withholds, the one who stays calm, restrained, composed, creates psychological gravity. Others orbit around them, waiting for validation that never comes easily. This tactic plays in all areas of life. In dating, the emotionally restrained partner creates tension, mystery, desire. In business, the executive who gives praise sparingly makes their approval priceless. In leadership, the figure who doesn't react emotionally commands silent authority. Even in parenting, the child adapts to the emotional tone of the parent, not the other way around. This isn't manipulation in the toxic sense. It's discipline. It's knowing when to give and when to deny. Because every emotion you express shifts power. And if you express everything, you give up control. Weak men express emotion impulsively. They chase closure. They over-apologize. They praise too quickly. They argue emotionally because they don't know how to tolerate discomfort. And worst of all, they reveal where they can be emotionally controlled. A Machiavellian player sees this immediately. They listen to what you say, yes, but more importantly, they notice what you need emotionally. Then, they withhold it, strategically. Not out of cruelty, but out of leverage. Here's how the game really works. A person who needs praise can be manipulated with compliments. A person who fears silence will reveal secrets to fill it. A person who needs to be liked can be controlled with approval. But a person who doesn't flinch when emotions are withheld, they're dangerous because they can't be baited. They don't need you to like them, to respond, to affirm. They move when they decide, not when you provoke. Machiavelli knew that controlling others wasn't about aggression. It was about creating emotional imbalance, making others crave something only you can deliver. And the way to do that? You regulate what others are desperate to receive. You delay responses. You pause after compliments. You withhold validation until the timing benefits your position. It's not about being emotionless, it's about being in command of your emotional output, like a general commanding troops. Each signal must serve a purpose. Because in a world where everyone's desperate to be seen, heard, praised, and comforted, the man who gives nothing for free becomes the man everyone watches. They wait, they chase, they adjust. Why? Because he's not reacting, he's governing. So next time you feel the urge to say something emotional, ask, am I speaking from strength or seeking relief? And remember, a man who needs nothing controls everything. 5. Playing the fool. Let's get something straight. Being underestimated is one of the most powerful positions you can occupy. And the smartest players, Machiavellian to the core, don't chase dominance by appearing brilliant. They win by appearing harmless. This is the fifth tactic you're already using without realizing it. Playing the fool. You've probably done this before. Pretended not to notice something just to see how others would react. Acted like you didn't know what was going on, so someone else would keep talking. Downplayed your intelligence or competence to avoid appearing threatening. That's not weakness. That's calculated invisibility. Machiavelli understood this on a fundamental level. He wrote that the wise man does at once what the fool does at last. But the real trick? Sometimes the wise man does nothing, so others expose themselves first. This tactic is used constantly in social and professional environments. You see it in boardrooms, politics, negotiation tables, and family dynamics. The one who acts a little behind, a little unaware, a little naive, often ends up learning the most, because people speak more when they think the other person isn't dangerous. Here's how it works. Most people are obsessed with appearing smart. They talk a lot, they name drop, they correct others. Why? Because they're insecure. They believe power is about recognition, but recognition paints a target, and targets get attacked. The Machiavellian thinker plays it differently. He intentionally hides his depth. He asks questions he already knows the answers to. He lets others believe they're superior, more informed, more capable. Why? Because when you let someone feel powerful, they become relaxed. And relaxed people leak information. A coworker who thinks you don't understand politics will tell you their real opinion when they think you're not a threat. A rival who underestimates you will show their hand early. A manipulator will overplay their tactics, thinking you're too naive to catch it. Playing the fool gives you one thing more valuable than dominance: intel. And with information, you can engineer your rise without triggering resistance. This shows up even in personal life. Let's say you're in a conflict with someone manipulative. Instead of reacting, defending, or trying to win, you pause. You ask questions. You stay soft, non-threatening. They relax. They get overconfident. And before they know it, they've overcommitted themselves to a story you can now use against them, if needed. Machiavellianism isn't about confrontation. It's about manipulation through misperception. And one of the most effective misperceptions you can project is harmlessness. Feign ignorance, downplay experience. Let others believe they're leading, while you quietly steer from the shadows. This tactic has another strategic function. It disarms envy. People don't envy what they don't notice. They don't target what they don't fear. By lowering your visible competence, you move beneath the radar. And in environments where competitors are constantly trying to outshine each other, the invisible man builds quietly. There's a reason some of the most feared power brokers in history were described as underwhelming or forgettable before their rise. They weren't loud, they weren't flashy, they weren't impressive at first glance, but they were watching, waiting, recording everything. Then when it mattered, they moved, surgically, swiftly, without warning. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. This is the brilliance of playing the fool. You don't pretend forever. You pretend until it's time to strike. Now here's where most people get it wrong. They confuse playing the fool with being a fool. They lean too hard into submission. They accept disrespect thinking it's strategy. But a true Machiavellian never sacrifices self-respect, only its appearance. He's calm, not passive. Quiet, not clueless. Observant, not absent. Because while others are busy posturing, he's busy positioning. The difference is critical. One seeks validation, the other seeks control. So the next time you're in a room full of people trying to prove how smart, successful, or dominant they are, try this. Say less. Ask simple questions. Let them fill the space with their need to be seen. And watch what they reveal. In the end, those who appear the weakest are often the most dangerous. Because the fool you ignore might be the one who knows everything. And if he knows when to act, when to speak, and when to disappear, he doesn't need to win the spotlight. He'll own the stage behind the curtain. Let's drop the illusion. You're not on the outside looking in. You're not some passive observer watching others manipulate, scheme, and rise. You're already playing the game, Every time you hold back a comment to protect your image, you're calculating. Every time you sugarcoat your words to influence someone, you're framing. Every time you decide not to reveal your real thoughts until the timing is right, you're concealing intent. That's not accidental. That's Machiavellian instinct. Most people go through life blind to their own tactics. They think they're just being nice, or just trying to avoid drama. But in reality, they're making micro-strategic decisions constantly, only without awareness. And that's the danger. The problem isn't that you're using tactics, it's that you don't know you are. And if you're playing unconsciously, you're vulnerable to someone who isn't. That's the turning point. Realizing you've been in this psychological battlefield all along. Workplaces, relationships, school, online. It's all warfare with a smile. People aren't just talking, they're positioning. People aren't just helping, they're buying leverage. People aren't just passive, they're gathering intel. The person who wins isn't the loudest. It's the one who sees the patterns, anticipates the play, and executes with precision. Now you've seen 5 examples of tactics that seem harmless on the surface. But underneath, they're loaded with strategy. Strategic silence, selective truth-telling, calculated charm, emotional withholding, playing the fool. You've probably used all of them without realizing you were pulling strings. That should terrify you, or empower you, because now you've crossed a threshold. Now you have a choice. Keep drifting through these games unconsciously, or start playing deliberately. Machiavelli's wisdom wasn't just about manipulation. It was about clarity. He believed that once you understand the real rules of power, you're no longer a pawn. You're not just reacting to life, you're directing it. So here's the charge: study yourself. Notice the tactics you use, sharpen them, refine them, remove the ones that leak power, and double down on the ones that bend the world in your favor. This isn't about becoming a villain. It's about becoming untouchable. Not through aggression, but through psychological clarity. Because in a world full of people reacting emotionally, needing validation, craving attention, you become a force of stillness, of calculation, of control. You're not becoming Machiavellian. You already are. Now become conscious of it. That's when the game really starts. If this opened your eyes even slightly, you're already ahead of most. Most people will never realize they're being played. They'll keep thinking they're just unlucky, just misunderstood, just too nice for this world. But not you. You saw behind the curtain. This was just the surface. The real tactics, the deeper plays, the subtle manipulations that decide power long before anyone notices, that's what we cover next. So if you're done living blind, subscribe. If you're done being predictable, join us. If you're ready to stop reacting and start engineering your influence from the inside out, this is your channel. This isn't about entertainment, it's about evolution. Don't just watch power, become it.